The sterile white of the courtroom felt like a tomb for my marriage. My wife, Eleanor, 8 months pregnant with our child, was gone. Vanished. Across the aisle, my mistress, Zara, offered a smirk that promised a future I suddenly wasn't sure I wanted. I was about to lose everything I thought I'd built: my company, my reputation, my family. It wasn't until the bailiff handed me a letter, its paper tear-stained and familiar, that I realized the truth was far more devastating than any lie Zara could spin. My wife hadn't just disappeared. She had orchestrated a disappearing act to save us all. And now, I had to choose between the life I'd meticulously crafted and the woman who carried my legacy, a choice that would either redeem me or shatter me completely. The gavel fell with a sharp crack, a sound that echoed the splintering of my life. Case number 734, Thorne versus Thorne. Are both parties present? Judge Miller's voice was a low drone, lost in the roaring inside my head. I stood, my hand instinctively smoothing down a non-existent crease in my $1,000 suit. Ethan Thorne, Your Honor. I am present. My own voice sounded foreign, a hollow imitation of the confident man who had walked in here this morning. And Mrs. Thorne? My lawyer, a piranha named Marcus, cleared his throat. Your Honor, we've been unable to reach my client's wife, Eleanor Thorne, this morning. Her phone goes straight to voicemail. A ripple of murmurs went through the small, crowded courtroom. I could feel the stares, the judgment, the millionaire whose perfect life was imploding in the most public way possible. I risked a glance across the aisle. Zara, what was she? My girlfriend? My co-conspirator? Her perfectly glossed lips were curled into a faint, triumphant smile. She met my gaze and gave a subtle, almost imperceptible nod, as if to say, "See? It's all going according to plan." But this wasn't the plan. The plan was for Eleanor to be here, to face the humiliation, to sign the papers that would sever our 10-year marriage and pave the way for my new life with Zara. The plan was a clean, brutal cut. Not this void, this terrifying silence. Eleanor was 8 months pregnant. The thought was a shard of ice in my gut. Wherever she was carrying my son. Our son. We'd picked out a name together in what felt like another lifetime. Leo. Leo Thorne. A strong name, a legacy name. I remembered the night we found out she was pregnant. It was after a charity gala. I'd been distant for months, already entangled in the intoxicating web of Zara's ambition and affection. But when Eleanor showed me the positive test, her eyes shining with a hope that I knew I was about to extinguish, a part of me, a long dormant part, had stirred. For a fleeting moment, I saw the woman I had fallen in love with, the brilliant, funny, compassionate woman who had believed in me when I was just a guy with a dream and a laptop. "Ethan, are you okay?" she had asked, her hand on my arm, her touch a spark on my calloused skin. "Yeah, Ellie, I'm happy," I'd lied, and the lie had tasted like ash. The affair with Zara had started innocently enough. She was a new hire in the marketing department of my tech firm, Innovate, a company I'd built from the ground up. She was sharp, hungry, and she looked at me with an awe that Eleanor hadn't shown in years. Eleanor saw the man who left his socks on the floor. Zara saw the titan of industry. It was a potent drug. Our late-night strategy sessions bled into dinners, the dinners into hushed conversations in dimly lit bars. She understood my drive, my relentless need to conquer. She didn't complain when I worked until midnight. She celebrated it. With her, I felt seen, powerful. With Eleanor, I had started to feel ordinary, and I hated ordinary. The affair was a whirlwind of stolen weekends, secret credit cards, and carefully constructed lies. I'm at a conference in Singapore, I'd tell Eleanor, while Zara and I were exploring the Amalfi Coast. The guilt was a low hum beneath the surface, easily ignored in the thrill of the forbidden. But then came the pregnancy. It should have been a wake-up call. Instead, it became a deadline. Zara, ever the strategist, had painted a picture of our future. "She'll use the baby to trap you, Ethan," she'd whispered in my ear one night, her fingers tracing the tense line of my jaw. "You need to get out now, before it's too late. We can build our own family. A better one." She'd made it sound so simple, so logical. A preemptive strike. I convinced myself it was for the best. A clean break was better than a slow, agonizing decay. I told Eleanor I wanted a divorce the day after we attended our first birthing class. The memory of her face, the way the color drained from it, the way her hand flew to her swollen belly as if to protect our child from my words. That memory would haunt my nightmares for years to come. "Mr. Thorne," Judge Miller's voice cut through the fog of my recollections. "Given the unusual circumstances and the advanced stage of Mrs. Thorne's pregnancy, I'm not comfortable proceeding. We'll adjourn for 48 hours. Find your wife, Mr. Thorne, or I'll be issuing a bench warrant for her." The words hit me like a physical blow. A bench warrant for a heavily pregnant woman who had never so much as gotten a parking ticket. The room started to spin. Marcus was guiding me out, his hand firm on my back. Zara was right behind me, her high heels clicking on the marble floor, a sound that suddenly grated on my nerves. "This is perfect, baby," she murmured, her voice a low purr as we stepped into the blinding sunlight. She's trying to play the victim, but she just made herself look unstable. This will only help our case. I barely heard her. My eyes were scanning the street, half expecting to see Eleanor, looking lost and confused. But there was no one, just the bustling city, indifferent to the gaping hole that had just opened up in my life. Back at my penthouse, the one I now shared with Zara, the sterile, minimalist decor felt cold and suffocating. It was Zara's taste, all chrome and glass and sharp edges. Eleanor's touch had been softer. She'd filled our old home with books, with art, with the scent of freshly baked bread. This place felt like a hotel lobby. Zara was on the phone with her own lawyer, her voice sharp and calculating. "Yes, that's right. A flight risk. Emotionally unstable." I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city I had conquered. My city. My kingdom. But what was a king without a legacy? Without a son to pass it all on to? The frantic energy that had propelled me for the past year was gone, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. Where was she? Was she okay? Was the baby okay? For the first time, the consequences of my actions were not abstract concepts, but a terrifying, immediate reality. The doorman buzzed up. "Mr. Thorne, a courier is here with a letter for you. He says it's urgent." "Send him up," I said, my heart starting to pound a frantic rhythm against my ribs. A few minutes later, a young man in a crisp uniform handed me a simple white envelope. My name was written on the front, in a familiar, elegant script that I hadn't seen in months. Eleanor's handwriting. Zara hung up the phone. "Who's that from?" she asked, a flicker of annoyance in her eyes. I didn't answer. My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. The paper inside was thick, expensive, the kind she always used, and it was tear-stained. The ink was slightly blurred in places, a testament to the sorrow in which it was written. "My dearest Ethan, it began, and as I read, the floor fell away from my feet. My dearest Ethan, if you are reading this, it means I went through with it. It means I chose peace over pride, and our son's well-being over the spectacle of a courtroom battle. I am sorry for the shock this will cause, but I could not, for the life of me, sit in that room and watch you dismantle our life, our history, piece by painful piece, with her sitting there, watching me break. I know you think I am weak for running, but Ethan, this is the strongest thing I have ever done, to walk away from the life we built, the home we shared, the future we planned. It takes a strength I didn't know I possessed, a strength born from the fierce, primal need to protect my child. Our child. He deserves to enter this world in an atmosphere of calm, not in the crossfire of a war I never wanted to fight. Do you remember that little cottage we rented in Monterey for our first anniversary? The one with the blue shutters and the garden full of lavender. You said it was the most peaceful place on earth. You said that one day, when we were old and grey, we would retire there and watch the sunset over the ocean. I think I'm going to try and find a place like that, Ethan. A place where the only sound is the crashing of the waves and the beating of my own healing heart. I don't want your money. I have taken only what I came into this marriage with, and a small fund I had set aside from my own work. I don't want to fight you. I just want to be left alone, to bring our son into the world with love and serenity. Perhaps one day, when he is old enough to understand, you can explain to him why his father chose ambition over family, why the reflection of success in a new lover's eyes was more appealing than the quiet, steady glow of a decade of love. Or perhaps, by then, you will have found a way to explain it to yourself. I am not writing this letter out of hate. The hate has burned itself out, leaving behind a hollow ache. I am writing this out of a love that I can no longer give to you, a love that I am now pouring entirely into the life growing inside me. He will know he was wanted. He will know he was loved. And he will be safe. Don't look for me, please. For the sake of the child you once seemed to want, grant me this one last kindness. Let me go. Goodbye, Ethan. Eleanor. The letter slipped from my fingers and drifted to the floor. The world had tilted on its axis. Every justification, every excuse I had built around myself crumbled into dust. She hadn't run to punish me. She had run to protect our son from me, from the wreckage I had created. What is it? Zara's voice was sharp, impatient. She bent down and snatched the letter before I could react. Her eyes scanned the page, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows knitting together in a frown. So she's playing the martyr, she scoffed, tossing the letter onto the glass coffee table as if it were a piece of trash. How pathetic. Don't look for me. She's just trying to manipulate you, Ethan, to make you feel guilty. I looked at her then, truly looked at her. The woman for whom I had thrown everything away. Her beauty, which had once seemed so vibrant, now looked hard, brittle. Her ambition, which had mirrored my own, now seemed rapacious and cruel. In that moment, I saw her through Eleanor's eyes, and the image was repulsive. Guilty, I finally said, my voice hoarse. Zara, she's 8 months pregnant and alone. She thinks I abandoned her for my career and a younger model. The words tasted like poison. And the worst part is, she's right. Zara's face hardened. Don't be ridiculous. We are building a life together. You were unhappy. We found each other. It's a love story, Ethan, not a tragedy. A love story? I laughed, a broken, empty sound. Is that what this is? Was it love that made you coach me on how to leave my pregnant wife? Was it love that made you smirk in that courtroom this morning, while I was terrified out of my mind? I was supporting you, she insisted, her voice rising. Everything I've done has been for us, to secure our future. Our future? I gestured around the cold, sterile apartment. This hollow shell? Zara, I think I've made a terrible mistake. The words hung in the air between us, an irrevocable truth. The triumphant smirk was gone from Zara's face, replaced by a flash of panic, then anger. A mistake? You're telling me this now? After everything? After I put my own career on the line to be with you? You're not going to let her win, Ethan. You're not going to let her manipulate you with some pathetic, tear-stained letter. But her words were just noise. My mind was a whirlwind of images. Eleanor, laughing in the kitchen, her hands dusted with flour. Eleanor, asleep in my arms, her soft breathing a comforting rhythm in the night. Eleanor, her face a mask of betrayal as I told her I was leaving. For months, I had been living in a self-imposed delusion, a narrative of my own making where I was the hero of my own story, breaking free from a stagnant life to pursue a grand passion. But Eleanor's letter had shattered that illusion. I wasn't the hero. I was the villain, the man who had broken the heart of the one person who had loved him unconditionally, the man whose son would be born in a place of exile without his father. I have to find her, I whispered, more to myself than to Zara. No, Zara said, her voice steely. You're not going anywhere. We have a court case to win. We have a life to build. I looked at the letter on the table, then back at Zara. The choice was suddenly, devastatingly clear. The life she was offering was a gilded cage, built on a foundation of lies and betrayal. The life Eleanor was offering, it was a chance at redemption, a chance to be the man she once thought I was, the father my son deserved. Get out, Zara, I said, my voice quiet but firm. Her eyes widened in disbelief. What? I said, get out, pack your things and go. You can't be serious, she sputtered, her face a mixture of rage and wounded pride. You're choosing her, the woman who walked out on you. No, I said, picking up the letter and holding it as if it were a sacred text. I'm choosing my son, and the man I should have been all along. The ensuing fight was ugly, a torrent of accusations and recriminations, but my heart wasn't in it. My mind was already elsewhere, on a dusty road leading to a small, quiet town with blue shutters and a garden full of lavender. Finding Eleanor wouldn't be easy. She was smart, resourceful. She had planned this. But I had resources too, and for the first time in a long time, I had a purpose that went beyond balance sheets and stock prices. I had to find my family, not to drag them back, but to beg for a forgiveness I knew I didn't deserve. The penthouse felt cavernous after Zara left, her angry words still echoing in the unnaturally silent rooms. The silence was a physical weight, pressing down on me, forcing a confrontation with the man I'd become. I spent the first 24 hours in a daze, fueled by black coffee and a self-loathing so profound it was almost paralyzing. I called Marcus and told him to drop the divorce proceedings. He argued, of course, citing the legal complexities, the financial entanglements. Ethan, this is professional suicide, he'd warned. You're making an emotional decision that will have catastrophic consequences. Just do it, Marcus, I'd said, my voice flat. The only catastrophe I'm concerned with right now is the one I've created in my own family. My next call was to a private investigator, a man named Costello, a discreet, old-school operator who owed me a favor. I need to find my wife, I said, the words tasting like gravel. She's gone away for a while. She's pregnant. I don't want to spook her. I just need to know she's safe. You got it, Mr. Thorne, Costello had said, his voice devoid of judgment. Any idea where she might have gone? Monterey, I'd answered, the name of the town from her letter, a fragile thread of hope. She mentioned a place with blue shutters and a lavender garden. The days that followed were a special kind of hell. I went to the office, moving through the motions like an automaton. My employees, who had once looked at me with a mixture of fear and respect, now regarded me with a wary curiosity. The news of my postponed divorce and Zara's abrupt departure had spread like wildfire through the company gossip mill. At night, I'd return to the empty penthouse and wander from room to room, haunted by the ghost of Eleanor. I'd see her reading in the armchair by the window, her brow furrowed in concentration. I'd hear the echo of her laughter in the kitchen. Every corner of my life was imprinted with her absence. My guilt was a living, breathing entity. It sat with me at the dinner table, a silent, accusing guest. It lay beside me in the cold, empty bed, whispering my failures into the darkness. I had everything a man could ever want: wealth, success, power, and I had traded the only thing that mattered for it. I had traded my soul for a mirage. Costello's updates were infrequent and disheartening. Lots of cottages with blue shutters in Monterey, Mr. Thorne. It's a bit of a needle in a haystack. Weeks turned into a month. The due date for the baby came and went. A son. I had a son somewhere in the world, and I didn't even know his name. The thought was a constant, dull ache in my chest. Had he been born? Was he healthy? Did he look like me? One rainy Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Costello. "I think I found something," he said, his voice cautious. "Not in Monterey. It was a long shot, but I expanded the search up the coast. There's a small town in Oregon, a place called Port Blossom, an artist's community, very quiet, very private. A woman matching your wife's description rented a small house there 2 months ago. Paid in cash. The house has, you guessed it, blue shutters." My heart leaped into my throat. Is she okay? Seems to be. The locals say she keeps to herself. A woman from the town's birthing center has been visiting her regularly. My source says she gave birth to a healthy baby boy about 3 weeks ago. The air rushed out of my lungs. A boy. A healthy baby boy. I closed my eyes, a wave of relief so intense it almost brought me to my knees, washing over me. "Thank you, Costello," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Send me the address." I didn't hesitate. I walked out of my office, leaving a multi-million-dollar deal hanging in the balance. I went home, packed a single bag, and got in my car. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. This was a journey I had to make alone. The drive from San Francisco to Port Blossom was long, a ribbon of highway stretching through towering redwood forests and along the rugged, wind-swept coast. With every mile that passed, the noise of my old life faded, replaced by the steady hum of the engine and the turmoil of my own thoughts. I thought about my ambition, the insatiable hunger that had driven me since I was a kid, growing up with nothing. I had always believed that success was a fortress, a bulwark against the chaos and uncertainty of the world. But I had been so focused on building the walls that I hadn't noticed the emptiness inside. I thought about Eleanor, about the subtle ways I had pushed her away long before Zara ever entered the picture. I had celebrated my successes with champagne and press releases, but I had shut her out of my failures, my fears, my doubts. I had made our marriage a lonely place for her, a place where she was expected to be a silent, supportive partner to the great Ethan Thorne. rather than the brilliant, equal partner she was. By the time I saw the sign for Port Blossom, a quaint, hand-carved piece of wood, I was a different man than the one who had left the city. The arrogance had been stripped away, replaced by a humbling, terrifying hope. I wasn't coming here to reclaim my wife or my son. I was coming here to surrender. Port Blossom was like stepping into a postcard from a bygone era. Weather-beaten fishing boats bobbed in the small harbour, their colourful flags fluttering in the salty breeze. The main street was lined with art galleries, independent bookstores and cosy cafes, their windows filled with handmade pottery and locally roasted coffee. There wasn't a single skyscraper in sight. I found the address Costello had given me on a quiet, tree-lined street at the edge of town. The house was small, a simple wooden cottage painted a cheerful shade of yellow, with bright blue shutters framing the windows. A garden, wild and untamed, but bursting with life, surrounded it. I could see lavender bushes, their purple spires swaying gently in the wind. I parked my car down the street and just sat there for a long time, my hands gripping the steering wheel, my heart pounding a nervous rhythm against my ribs. What was I doing here? What right did I have to disrupt the peace she had so carefully constructed? Then I saw her. The front door opened and Eleanor stepped out onto the porch. She looked different. Her hair was longer, pulled back in a loose, messy bun. She wore a simple cotton dress, her feet bare. But the biggest change was in her face. The strain, the sadness that had etched itself into her features in those last few months was gone. She looked serene. She was holding a baby carrier. She placed it gently on a padded blanket on the porch, then sat down beside it, her back to me. She reached into the carrier and, a moment later, lifted a tiny, blanket-wrapped bundle into her arms. My son. The sight stole the air from my lungs. From this distance, I couldn't see his face, but I could see the way Eleanor looked at him, the way she cradled him against her chest, her entire being focused on this small, miraculous creature. It was a perfect, self-contained world of love, a world that I had no place in. I almost put the car in reverse. I almost drove away, content to know that they were safe, that they were happy. But then, a thought, clear and sharp, cut through my fear. A boy deserves to know his father. Not the man I was, but the man I could be. My legs felt like lead as I got out of the car and walked up the gravel path. The crunch of my shoes on the stones sounded like gunshots in the quiet afternoon. Eleanor's head snapped up. Her eyes widened, the serenity on her face instantly replaced by a look of shock, of fear. She instinctively pulled the baby closer to her chest, a shield against my intrusion. "Ethan," she breathed, her voice a barely audible whisper. I stopped at the bottom of the porch steps, my hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "Eleanor, Ellie, I'm not here to... I just needed to see you, to know you were both okay." She stared at me, her eyes a mix of old hurt and new strength. "How did you find me?" "I hired someone," I admitted, shamefaced. "I was so worried. The letter, I didn't know if you were safe." A wry, sad smile touched her lips. "I'm safer here than I ever was with you in that penthouse." The words were a punch to the gut, but I knew I deserved them. "I know," I said quietly. "I know that now." We stood there in silence for a long moment, the only sound the cooing of the baby in her arms. Finally, I took a hesitant step closer. Can I see him?" She hesitated, her grip on the baby tightening. I could see the war in her eyes, the mother's instinct to protect warring with the part of her that knew this was inevitable. Slowly, Reluctantly, she nodded. I walked up the steps and stood before her, my gaze falling on the tiny face peeking out from the blue blanket. He had a full head of dark hair, just like mine, and a small, perfect nose. His eyes were closed, his little chest rising and falling in the gentle rhythm of sleep. He was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. "What's his name?" I asked, my voice thick. "Leo," she said softly, the name we had chosen together. A dam of emotion broke inside me, and a single hot tear traced a path down my cheek. I hadn't cried in years, not when my father died, not when I closed my first multi-million-dollar deal, but looking at my son, at the life I had almost thrown away. I wept. "He's perfect, Ellie," I whispered. She didn't answer, but I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Not forgiveness, not yet. But something softer than the anger and hurt that had been there before. Understanding, perhaps. "Why are you here, Ethan?" she asked again, her voice stronger this time. "What do you want?" I looked at her then, at this woman who had shown me the true meaning of strength. "I want to be his father," I said, the words coming from a place of raw, unvarnished truth. "I know I don't deserve it. I know I have no right to ask. But I will do anything, to be a part of his life. I'll follow your rules. I'll stay in a motel. I'll do whatever you say. Just please don't shut me out completely." It was the most honest, most vulnerable I had ever been. I wasn't the millionaire, the titan of industry. I was just a man, begging for a second chance. Eleanor looked from my face to the sleeping baby in her arms. The salty sea air swirled around us, carrying the scent of lavender and the sound of a future I was desperately hoping to be a part of. The decision was hers, and I would wait for as long as it took for her answer. Eleanor didn't answer right away. She studied my face for what felt like an eternity, her expression unreadable. Then, with a slow, deliberate sigh, she stood up. "Come inside, Ethan. We can't talk about this out here." The inside of the cottage was as simple and peaceful as the outside. The furniture was a collection of mismatched, comfortable-looking pieces. Books were stacked on every available surface, and a half-finished painting of the coastline rested on an easel by the window. It felt more like a home than my sterile penthouse ever had. She led me to a small, worn armchair, then sat on the sofa opposite me, Leo still nestled in her arms. "I need you to understand something," she began, her voice low and steady. This is my life now. It's quiet, it's small, and it's safe. I will not have it disrupted." "I understand," I said, my voice earnest. "I don't want to disrupt it. I want to, I don't know, contribute to it, if you'll let me." Leo stirred in her arms, his tiny fists waving in the air. Eleanor's attention shifted to him, her features softening as she soothed him. Watching her, I was struck by how natural she was as a mother, how completely at ease. "You can stay," she said finally, her eyes still on our son. "There's a motel at the edge of town, the Driftwood Inn. You can rent a room there. You can see Leo. But we do this on my terms." A wave of relief washed over me, so potent it almost made me dizzy. "Thank you, Ellie. Anything. Whatever you say." "First," she said, her gaze meeting mine, sharp and clear, "you will not try to give me money. You will not try to buy me a bigger house or a newer car. Leo and I have everything we need." I nodded. "Okay. Second, our time together will be about him," she continued, gesturing to the baby. "We will not be rehashing the past. We will not be talking about her." She couldn't bring herself to say Zara's name. "This is about co-parenting Leo. Nothing more. I understand, I repeated, though a part of me ached at the finality in her tone. And third, she said, her voice dropping slightly, if you hurt me, or if you hurt him, in any way, you will be gone. No second chances. This is it, Ethan. Your one and only shot. I won't, I vowed, my voice thick with unshed tears. I swear, Ellie, I won't let you down. I won't let him down. And so began the most challenging and transformative period of my life. I checked into the Driftwood Inn, a clean, no-frills motel with a flickering neon sign. The room was a world away from my penthouse, with its lumpy mattress and cheap laminate furniture. But it felt more real, more grounding than any five-star hotel I'd ever stayed in. The next morning I called Zara. It was a conversation I had been dreading, but I knew it was necessary. She was furious, her voice a venomous hiss over the phone. So you found her, she spat. Are you happy now, playing house with the little homemaker who ran away? Zara, it's over, I said, my voice firm. For good. My lawyer will be in touch about severing our professional ties. I'll make sure you're compensated fairly for your work at the company. But we are done. You'll regret this, Ethan, she seethed. You're throwing away a dynasty for a woman who couldn't even stand up for herself. No, I said quietly. She's the strongest person I know. And I'm not throwing anything away. I'm finally trying to build something that matters. I hung up before she could respond, a sense of finality settling over me. The chapter of my life defined by blind ambition and reckless passion was closed. My days in Port Blossom fell into a tentative rhythm. Every morning, I would walk to Eleanor's cottage. I would sit on the porch while she fed Leo. Then she would let me hold him. The first time she placed him in my arms, my whole body went rigid with fear. He was so small, so fragile. I was terrified I would break him. Just support his head, Eleanor said, her voice soft as she guided my hand. Like this. See, you're a natural. I looked down at the tiny baby in my arms, his trusting eyes blinking up at me, and felt a love so fierce, so overwhelming, it was a physical force. This was real. This was what mattered. We started taking short walks together, me pushing the stroller, Eleanor walking beside me, a careful distance between us. We talked about Leo, his sleep schedule, the funny faces he made, the way he grabbed onto my finger with surprising strength. We didn't talk about us. The past was a silent, sleeping giant between us, and we were both terrified of waking it. The people of Port Blossom, a close-knit community, were initially wary of the man in the expensive car who had suddenly appeared in their quiet town. But as the days turned into weeks, they saw me at the local grocery store, fumbling with diapers and formula. They saw me at the park, pushing a stroller. They saw a man trying, clumsily but earnestly, to be a father. And slowly, their guardedness gave way to a quiet acceptance. One afternoon, as I was changing Leo's diaper on the floor of the cottage, making a complete mess of it, Eleanor knelt beside me, a small, amused smile playing on her lips. "Here, let me show you a trick," she said, her hand brushing against mine as she adjusted the diaper tab. The casual touch was like an electric shock. I froze, my eyes meeting hers. For a fleeting second, the carefully constructed walls between us crumbled, and I saw a flicker of the old Ellie, the woman I had married, the woman I had loved. The moment passed as quickly as it came. She pulled her hand back, her expression once again guarded. But it was enough. It was a crack in the ice, a hint that perhaps, just perhaps, the fragile truce we had forged could one day become something more. It was a glimmer of hope, and I clung to it like a drowning man to a piece of driftwood. The seasons began to turn in Port Blossom. The vibrant greens of summer gave way to the crisp golds and fiery reds of autumn. Leo grew from a sleepy newborn into a curious, babbling infant. He learned to roll over, to giggle, to reach for my face with his chubby little hands. Each milestone was a quiet celebration, a small brick in the new foundation we were trying to build. My life in the city became a distant echo. I managed my company remotely, my calls brief and efficient. The relentless drive that had once consumed me had been replaced by a new, more profound purpose. My focus had narrowed to this small cottage, this quiet town, this tiny human who was slowly but surely rewiring my entire being. The awkwardness between Eleanor and me began to soften, replaced by a comfortable, familiar rhythm. We developed our own language, a shorthand of shared glances and unspoken understandings. I learned that the slight furrow in her brow meant Leo was about to get fussy, that the small smile she tried to hide meant she was secretly pleased with my improving, diaper-changing skills. One blustery October evening, after we had put a sleeping Leo down in his crib, Eleanor was making tea in the kitchen. I stood awkwardly in the doorway, my jacket on, ready to leave for my motel. "Stay," she said, her back to me. "There's a storm rolling in. It's silly for you to drive in this weather." The offer was casual, but it felt monumental. It was the first time she had willingly invited me to stay past my designated Leo time. "Are you sure?" I asked, my heart skipping a beat. She turned, a steaming mug in each hand, and offered me one. "It's a big couch," she said with a faint smile. We sat in the living room, the sound of the wind and rain beating against the windows, creating a cozy, intimate atmosphere. For a long time, we just sipped our tea in silence, watching the fire crackle in the hearth. "I saw the article online," she said finally, her voice soft. "About you stepping down as CEO, promoting Sarah to take your place." I nodded, my gaze fixed on the flames. It was time. Sarah's brilliant. The company is in good hands. My priorities, they've changed. "You worked your entire life to build that company," she said, a note of wonder in her voice. "It was your identity." "I thought it was," I admitted. "But I was wrong. It was just a job. My identity. I think I'm still figuring that out." I looked at her then, my heart in my throat. "Ellie, I need to say this. And I need you to know that I'm not saying it to get anything from you. I just need to say it." She waited, her eyes searching mine. "I am so sorry," I began, the words I had rehearsed 1,000 times in my head, spilling out in a raw, unpolished torrent. Not just for the affair. That was a symptom of a much deeper problem. I'm sorry for the years I took you for granted, for the nights I came home late and didn't even see you, for the times you tried to talk to me and I was too busy, too important, to listen. I was arrogant and selfish, and I was a coward. I ran away from our problems and into the arms of someone who told me what I wanted to hear. I broke our vows, and I broke your heart, and it is the single greatest regret of my life. Tears streamed down my face, hot and cleansing. You didn't deserve any of it. And Leo, he deserves a father who is worthy of him. I am trying every single day to become that man. Eleanor was crying too, silent tears tracking paths down her cheeks. She reached out and placed her hand on my knee, her touch a balm on my wounded soul. "Thank you for saying that, Ethan," she whispered. "It means more than you know." She took a shaky breath. "I wasn't perfect either. I saw you pulling away, and I didn't know how to reach you. I got lost in my own world, my own career. I think I think we both got lost. We stopped being a team. It wasn't an absolution, but it was something far more valuable. A shared acknowledgement of our mutual humanity, our mutual failings. It was the beginning of a true, honest forgiveness. That night, I didn't sleep on the couch. After we had talked for hours about everything and nothing, about the past and the future, Eleanor stood up. "Come on," she said softly. "You look exhausted." She led me to the spare bedroom, a small, simple room with a comfortable-looking bed. "You can sleep here," she said. As I stood in the doorway, a wave of gratitude so intense it was almost painful washed over me. "Ellie," I began, but she cut me off. "Good night, Ethan," she said, her voice gentle but firm. And then she did something that shattered the last of my defenses. She leaned in and pressed a soft, fleeting kiss on my cheek. It wasn't a kiss of passion or of romance. It was a kiss of peace, a kiss of acceptance, a kiss that said, "You are welcome here. You are part of this family." As I lay in bed that night, listening to the storm rage outside and the quiet, steady breathing of my son in the next room, I knew that I was finally, truly home. The road to redemption was long, and I was still at the very beginning of it. But for the first time in a very long time, I had hope. Hope for a new kind of love, a new kind of family, built not on the ashes of the past, but on the solid ground of forgiveness, respect, and a shared, unconditional love for our son. The years that followed were not a fairy tale. They were real life, messy and complicated and beautiful in their imperfection. I sold the penthouse in the city and bought a small house just down the street from Eleanor and Leo. We didn't get back together. Not in the traditional sense. The wounds of the past were too deep to simply erase. Instead, we forged something new. Something that didn't have a name, but was more resilient and more profound than the marriage we had lost. We became a team. We were co-parents, partners in the most important venture of our lives, raising Leo. We were there for his first steps, his wobbly, triumphant journey across the living room floor from his mother's arms to mine. We were there for his first words, Dada and Mama, spoken with equal reverence. We were there for scraped knees, for bedtime stories, for finger paintings that we hung on our respective refrigerators like priceless works of art. We spent birthdays and holidays together, creating new traditions for our unconventional family. On Christmas morning, we would be at Eleanor's cottage, drinking coffee and watching Leo tear open his presents with unbridled joy. On his 4th birthday, we co-hosted a party in the park, a chaotic, happy affair with a bouncy castle and too much cake. I watched Eleanor laugh as Leo smeared frosting on her nose, and my heart swelled with a love that was different from the passionate, possessive love of my youth. It was a quieter, deeper love, rooted in shared history, mutual respect, and an unshakable bond forged by our son. The ghost of Zara faded into a distant, cautionary tale. She was a reminder of the man I had been, a catalyst for the man I had become. I heard through the grapevine that she had left the company and moved to London, still chasing that elusive, glittering prize of success. I wished her no ill will. In a strange way, I was grateful to her. Without her, I might never have been forced to confront the emptiness of my own ambition. One sunny afternoon, when Leo was 5 years old, we were at the beach, our favorite spot. Leo was chasing the waves, his laughter carried on the salty wind. Eleanor and I sat on a blanket, watching him, a comfortable silence between us. "He's happy," she said, her eyes shining as she watched our son. He is, I agreed. You've done an amazing job with him, Ellie. She turned to me, a soft smile on her lips. We've done an amazing job, Ethan. The we hung in the air, a testament to how far we had come. From the wreckage of a bitter divorce to this, a peaceful, shared existence. I have to go to the city next week, I said, breaking the comfortable silence. A board meeting. I was wondering if you and Leo would want to come with me. She looked surprised. To the city? Yeah, I said, my heart starting to beat a little faster. We could go to the aquarium, the one you always wanted to take him to. We could get a suite at a hotel, have room service, make it an adventure. It was more than just an invitation. It was a bridge, a step from our separate lives in Port Blossom into a shared future, a future where we could exist as a family, not just here, in our safe harbor, but out there, in the world. She was quiet for a long moment, her gaze on the horizon. I held my breath, preparing myself for a gentle refusal. Then she looked at me, her eyes clear and bright, and she smiled. A real smile, one that reached her eyes and crinkled the corners in that familiar way I had missed for so long. I think we'd like that, she said. We'd like that very much. That evening, after we had tucked a sun-kissed sleepy Leo into his bed, Eleanor walked me to the door of her cottage. It was a ritual we had performed 1,000 times, a friendly, platonic parting at the end of the day. But tonight was different. I turned to say good night, and she reached out and took my hand. Her touch was warm, her fingers lacing through mine with a natural, easy familiarity. Ethan, she said, her voice soft. I'm glad you found us. Me too, Ellie, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. Me too. I leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't the tentative peacemaking kiss on the cheek from years ago. It was a real kiss, soft and slow and full of all the words we had never said, all the forgiveness we had earned, all the hope we had for the future. It wasn't a promise of a fairy tale ending, of a return to the life we once knew. That life was gone, and we were different people now. But it was a promise of a new beginning, a new kind of forever, built on the foundations of a hard-won peace, a resilient friendship, and a love that had been tested, broken, and had somehow, miraculously, found its way back, stronger and more true than it had ever been before. As I walked back to my own quiet house under the star-studded Oregon sky, I knew that I had finally found what I had been searching for my entire life. Not in the boardrooms and balance sheets, but here, in the sound of the ocean, in the laughter of my son, and in the eyes of the woman who had given me a second chance, not just at love, but at life itself. We hope this story touched your heart. If you've ever felt lost and found your way back, or believe in the power of second chances, let us know in the comments below. Your story matters. Please like this video, share it with someone who might need a little hope today, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful real-life stories that remind us it's never too late to change, to forgive, and to love again. Thank you for watching.